In this video, we're going to look at the setup of payroll. Here we can see in the menu that we only have the option for personnel, so payroll hasn't been defined as yet. Under the personnel menu, you can actually set up your individuals. Simply click on the plus, define the details for the individual, including their contact address, email address, and any roles that they have within your organization. This could be employee, and for our not-for-profit organizations, trustee, volunteer, or gift aid authorized official. Those details will vary in a commercial organization. To switch payroll on, from the control menu, we'll go to Organization Profile. Under the optional features, we have the option for payroll. It'll warn us that we need to configure this under the payroll menu. Note that you optionally have the use for departmental or activity analysis. You can use one, both, or neither. Simply tick as required. In this case, we're just going to use one, which is departmental analysis, and we'll click Submit. We're now directed to complete the PAYE settings, which is under the payroll menu, which is now in the menu structure, Configure Payroll, PAYE settings, and here we'd enter the detail. If we're moving from another system during a PAYE year, you would enter the date of the last filing of the FPS. And similarly, if you're filing P11Ds under Liberty accounts. If you qualify for small employer case relief or employment allowance, you tick the option. It will warn you that you must send an EPS to ensure that HMRC know that you're claiming. For those where it's applicable, you'll define the de minimis state aid sector and confirm any allowance already claimed in that tax year. You can configure where that allowance is recorded on the system against a fund, where you've specified funds for our not-for-profit organizations, and where you're using departmental or activity analysis, again you can confirm for that. Record your tax office, your refunds account, your payroll defaults. So typically we might be using monthly paid employees, so we'll have that as a default. We can automatically email payslips after the FPS is filed, always a good option. And you have the option of recording the salary payments into your bank account on Liberty accounts. The choice is yours whether you do that or that is generated later on. Under the nominal ledger transfer accounts, you can say which account you want your wages and salary liability to be recorded, as well as your staff employer national insurance account. In regards to cost analysis, again we're looking here for a non-profit organization, so you can define the fund and the department, where the department is being used, and if you're using activity as well, you could use activity. And this could be split across multiple funds, departments, or activities as required. For those where you're using payroll benefits, then it's simple selection of the benefits required. We're now going to switch to an organization where we have some data already added. So in this account, we've already completed the details under the configuration for the PAYE settings. But additionally, we can define the payroll elements. So this is what you would expect to see on the payslips you give to the individual members of staff. So as an example, you might see staff pay. For those of you who don't like the description staff pay, you might call it monthly salary. So we'll set one up called monthly salary, and that's renaming that. What type of element is it? It's a pay element, benefit, expenses, a deduction, or a statutory payment. What's the payment pattern? Recurring fixed amount, same amount every month. Recurring variable, maybe a difference in the number of hours worked, or an ad hoc payment, something like a bonus which is only paid every so often. Then you'll define whether it's included in the gross pay, national insurance and pensionable gross. For very few people, Class 1A NIC is also applicable, but generally not. And you can specify the account to which those payroll costs are updated. We save it and we'll add the next. And the next may be weekly wages. It's a pay element, it's variable, it's included in those elements, and it updates the payroll costs account. You might have another one for overtime. Again, it's a pay element, it's variable, and included there. And again, I'll update the payroll costs, but you could attribute it to a different account. So we now have these different elements defined, and the next stage is to look at defining your pension scheme. So here we'll look at adding the pension scheme, and if we take the example of adding nest, we'll say yes, it's a nest. Nest is a relief at source. You make that decision as type of pension. You have the option of net pay or relief at source. Do you restrict to the auto-enrolment thresholds? You'll need to determine that from your own setup. And then who is the scheme provider? In this case, Nest. And we can then say what the contributions are. So it's based on a percentage. It's a gross 5%, which is a net 4% deduction from the pay packet. And the employer side may be a 3% on the employer. Define the expense account and the liability account. The system standards are offered. And you've now set up the scheme that is required. If you have multiple schemes, you can add further schemes. We'll now look at the actual personnel. So we saw previously that we could add personnel, but then some would be defined as employees. Here we have 3 employees already set up on the system. We'll look at adding a 4th. To add a 4th, we'll click on the plus in the bottom right hand corner and we'll complete their name on the top of the screen. Where they're under 21 or over retirement age, you'd need to verify their date of birth. You'd then complete with their contact details, their address and email address for sending their payslips, their employment details. Where it's a new employee, an HMRC notification is required. You would select that, or either of the other 2 options. In terms of their cost analysis, then, as we saw previously, you can split their cost across multiple funds, departments, and here in this particular case we're using activities as well. In terms of auto-enrolment, if there's any opt-out, we'd put the date of opt-out into the system. Once those details have been completed, then your additional employee is now registered on the system. The system will then go to the next section, which is details of previous employment or prior pay. So where you're getting details from P45, enter in their details of pay and tax from that P45. If you're moving to Liberty accounts from another system during a PAYE year, then it would be details in their current employment and national insurance. But if we move on from there, we've now recorded the individual onto the system and we can look at setting up their payroll and tax detail. Click on the payroll and tax. They're going to be on the payroll, so we'll make them active. And then how are they paid? Monthly pay run. HMRC pay frequency is the same, monthly. And we would typically use the default account for the employer national insurance. Payment, normally an online, but you can also include their details of their bank. HMRC tax codes, we put in their tax code and national insurance number and their category. Where there are student loans, we'd also confirm the student loans or postgraduate loans. HMRC supplemental information will be the number of working hours in a normal week. And submit to confirm. Two final stages. We now need to tell the system what pension scheme the individual is on and the pay elements that are relevant to them. So click on the pay elements to start with, and we'll add, and we'll say this individual gets a monthly salary, one of those a month, at whatever the rate is for the month. And save and submit if that's the only one, or if potentially they may get a bonus or overtime, we can add those. We'll add and say maybe they are also getting overtime. Maybe this is an hourly rate. We don't know what it is until it happens, so we'll put it in at £15 an hour, and we'll save, and then we'll submit. And finally, to confirm the pension scheme, we'll just confirm the pension scheme the individual is on. If the standard rates apply, there's no override, so we don't need to worry about that. If there's an additional voluntary contribution, then we'll put the AVC in either on a fixed or percentage basis. And we then click submit. If the individual has any court orders or loans, they can also be entered, but otherwise you're now fully set up. Please contact us for further information on this and other features of Liberty Accounts.